What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to my channel, and we are going to review and briefly and lightly talk about Love is Blind Season 9, the reunion episode, and we're done with this season. Now, there's been a lot of tea that was already spilled before the season actually wrapped. So that means the spoilers for the reunion, which should have been the reunion, was a dud. I found it entertaining. Don't get me wrong, because it caused me to be like, cringe and all those kinds of things. But, what we found out really wasn't anything new. They didn't touch on, there were no marriages, nobody stayed together, rather than the drama surrounding the couples, and not even acknowledging that no one actually said I do. There was no golden couple, nothing like that at all. So, yeah, that's kind of how it went. I think that brings some of the cast members that didn't make it onto the show, wasted a lot of time where we could spend a lot of time talking about other things in more detail. And we're going to get into that. So, just to start off, I thought the set was absolutely gorgeous. I like the idea of having it outside, and it was very different. So I'll give the production value kudos to that. All right. They opened it up with a musical selection, and I didn't get it. The young man was talented. Don't want to take anything from him, but I didn't understand why we needed it. But it was nice. And the cast came walking down these cobblestone steps in which they were kind of afraid to tumble down the steps, especially the girls with the heels. The guys, not so much, right? They got flat shoes on. But the girls with the heels and things like that. Everybody looked great, though. I will say everybody, I think, looked great for the most part. I said who a lot. I was like, who is that? I'm talking about Madison, new face, copy and paste, new face. Annie, that was Annie, who, and Allie, who again. Who I feel like through the show, between the pods, her wedding day, and the reunion, she's had 3 different faces. Botox under the age of 30 years old. You look old. You look like an old Beverly Hills housewife that is in her early 50s rather than being someone who is under 30 years old. That, whew, I talked about that in my last video, so go back and watch my last video when I rant about Allie and young girls, young women under the age of 40 getting Botox and fillers. So I'm not going to be before you long because really it's nothing to report. They start off the first segment with Megan and, Jordan, PJ Sparkle, aka Sparkle Megan. I'm going to call her PJ Sparkle. That's my thing. And they kind of, touch on their breakup and, what was the reason for the breakup. They asked Jordan, and Jordan was like, she right over there. You ask her. And she admitted, yeah, it was the lifestyle, right? Which I think is understandable. But at the same time, he told you, again, from the very beginning, where he was at financially, and you wanted to do something different. You wanted to bond with his son because it related to your dead daddy, who also had type 1 diabetes. And I don't really think that's fair, but I get the point of the show is to try something you ain't never tried before, do something you've never done before so that you can end up with a result and end up maybe being happy. And to answer the age-old question, is love blind? Which it is not blind, okay? So as the spoilers before the reunion hit, we also know that Sparkle Megan had a baby, and when the reunion was filmed, she had given birth about 2 to 3 months prior to the show. The girls thought she looked a little thick, but she did a little bit. She looked good. Spanx and waist trainers are the way to go. You just had a baby. Let's be very real. You don't really snap back that quick, okay? Waist trainers and all that stuff is going to be your friend. But she looked good. She looked good. She says that, she met her partner, they called him partner, probably about July of that year that they wrapped filming at the end of April, May, I think they said. So within 3 months, she met her partner and got pregnant, had a whole baby, and is a mom now. So that was the big surprise that she had. Everybody was sketchy about the timeline. You know, I don't know. People are weird. I think that, she was searching for something. I think the experiment maybe had her, search within herself, and being with Jordan may have made her to think, money and lifestyle isn't everything, and, but I don't know, because baby daddy looked rich. Okay. He looked like he got a little coin. He looked it rich. Okay. In my opinion. So kudos to her. She's able to, now experience motherhood and, have a better empathy for Jordan. It looks like they're cordial, although she did not tell him that she was having a baby. Somebody, according to Jordan, reached down his DMs. He called them disgusting, and, he reached out to her about it, and she was transparent and says, yes, I am pregnant, and baby's cute. She's got a cute little baby. You can look at pictures on the interwebs, and he's a little cutie. All right. So congrats to Sparkle Megan and her partner and her baby Brooks. So that's awesome. And throughout, him and Sparkle Meg's segment, he was very respectful about it. So I call him a class act. And, even though in the camera he said that he regrets introducing his son to Megan, and Megan thought that was hurtful. But what I do like is that he took ownership. Yeah, I should have thought about that, a little bit more in this experiment when it came to my son. So he did take some ownership of that, and, not putting all the blame, kind of on Megan when he is the father of his own son, and, saying, why did I introduce, like, you had, you could have said no as well. So I'm glad he took ownership. So yeah, that's that on that. I mean, ain't really not much to report, right? Now I want to get into the segment with Patrick and Casey. And what bothered me is when Vanessa introduced Casey and our favorite baby seal. I thought that was a cringy introduction. I'm going to say this. I felt like throughout the season in the pods when it related to Patrick, he had a lot of that internal racism against himself because, I'm Asian and, I mostly date white women and they don't feel me and all of this kind of stuff. And, self-hating and self-deprecating and trying to be the nice guy. Like, be who you are. It's not that nice guys finish last, but don't get stepped on trying to be so accommodating to be seen and revered as a nice guy. Just be who you are, right? That's all I can say to that. And so I didn't like the baby seal comment because to me, with the whole thing having, this air of racism around it, about him being Asian, and then the Annie of it all, who was also Asian, and then Casey, and, my brother dates Asian women, my dad sings karaoke in Korea, my brother, my sister, whoever dates somebody who's half black. Like, they're black, okay? I don't know what this half thing is. Like, that baby seal comment, it gave racism to me. And not that maybe Vanessa meant it that way, but I felt it was like a slight microaggression, in my opinion, and it made me cringe. Sorry to say, Casey is still a liar. She's still annoying. She still never admits the truth. She skirts around the truth. She skirts around what the issue was. She claims that she was trying to protect Patrick. She never broke up with him, so he was confused. And then there's this whole segment about getting the ring back and all this nonsense. Whose ring is it? Whose ring is it not? Him thinking, when I get back to Denver, we're going to work this out. So you keep the ring for now. He asked for it back. She not get, it was a whole big mess. Patrick needs to, man up a little bit, in my opinion. And until he does that, he's going to get the same treatment. Sorry, so sorry, Patrick. You know, you trying to be out of it, agreeable, the nice guy, making sure everybody likes you is making us not like you because you're not being true to self. Okay, so hopefully good luck to you. But yeah, they had this back and forth about the ring. Then it's kind of like, well, it's not your ring anyway. You know, it's production's ring. You didn't buy that ring and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, in the end, with this stupid back and forth about this stupid ring, Casey does give the ring back. And what really made me just want to smack Allie, if that was Allie, because she's done had three faces talking about it's production's ring. You didn't buy the ring, and standing up for Casey. Girl, shut up. Nobody asked you, right? Worry about you and yours and what you don't have to this day. And we're not just talking about your original face. I mean, but as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. And all in all, Casey is a nasty bee. Point blank, and the period of it all. Casey is just a nasty girl. She thinks she's prettier, desirable, more desirable than she actually is. The lip fillers girl is giving droopy right here. Like you got this little thing right here, and then the filler is doing this. Ma'am, these fillers gonna kill y'all. I want to see what y'all look like, all of y'all, in about 10, 15 years. Y'all really gonna be looking old. Okay. Oh, another thing that irked my soul when Casey did give the ring back to Patrick. She said, oh, should I toss it? Like, that was such... That irked me. And then they did a montage of Casey and Patrick like we really needed it. We do not care. And then a waste of time in this reunion was them doing this basketball shots. What do you call them? 3-pointers, because that's what they did in the pods. And then after she gives him the ring back, they play for the ring with these said shots, these 3-pointers, in which he loses and has to give the ring back to her. Waste of time. It was mad corny. Mad corny. Mad corny. Waste of time. But it also seems like Casey, you know, because she thinks she's a hot girl, and she's not. She got the same copy and paste face. You're not that cute. You think you the hot stuff. Maybe in Denver, but anywhere else, I guess, like, you dating everybody. Did you date Joe or did you not date Joe? We don't care, but it always behooves me when people ask, you know, how long did you date it for? I don't know. A month, maybe a month and a half. You don't know how long you dated for? These young folks are so weird. You know, these folks got problems with the truth. And then it goes to this whole Joe, Madison, Casey thing at a pool party. And, you know, Madison's mad about this whole thing still about Joe. She thinks that because of Casey was the demise of her relationship with Joe. But girl, he never liked you. We're not going over that again. Read the room. You want a man who doesn't want you. Think better of yourself. And I guess whatever happened between those two and who's conflating the truth, whether it be Casey, whether it be Madison, I don't believe anything that Casey has to say, but Madison is a delusional. So somewhere in the middle is the truth. And I guess she says, or Casey says at the pool party, per Madison's recollection, which we don't know is true, oh girl, we Eskimo sisters. And honestly, I didn't know what that meant. So I had to Google and had to go look it up. And I guess that's two women who've slept with the same man. I guess. Like, y'all are weird. And to walk up to another woman and say that, couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. If that's something you young people do, I don't know. Couldn't be me. But all in all, like, you know, Joe, of course, like I said 1,000 times, he never liked her. He came across, he didn't like her. She didn't get it, you know. But although some would argue that he was true to his feelings and things like that. At the end of the day, and with that R word mustache that he has, that some people calling it the MAGA mustache, he's a douchebag. Like, he's a bro, he's a douchebag. You know, I don't understand why women take him seriously. Apparently, he's in another relationship that came out in the in the streets. Some girl named Avery, but I wouldn't even if Avery. I wouldn't even be with Joe. He ran away on his 5-year relationship bride before they got married. He ran away on the experiment bride, and now you with him, and y'all didn't date seriously to the pool party, and now y'all serious. I'm not going over that because who cares? But Avery at the house, you gonna take Joe serious? Joe must have some real good D game because y'all can't see he's a douchebag and a bro and have a problem with commitment. So I guess get in where it fits in. So we get into Nick and Annie. It's a real short segment because they wasted so much time on Casey and Patrick, Sparkle, Megan, and Jordan. I didn't mind them so much because they were part of the main cast. But, they bring Kate into it because Nick said, I love you to both of them in the pod. So, Nick owned it. Nick owned it. I'm so sorry. He had a genuine apology. He owned it, looked at her in her face. But, she had some smoke for him. So she kept going with it. And he's just like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have did it. You're right. That's basically it. Annie, she explains the reason she was kind of like, oh my God, you don't love me much as you love, you don't love me as much as I love you. More, please.
More, please.
She just says she wanted to hold on to that feeling in the pods and, basically self-destructed. And I think that, that was part of it, but also there was a level of desperation. Vanessa, basically says, hey, the people said, you should have picked Brendan. He would have been a better pick. And he's like, no, I picked right. I picked the man that I wanted. I don't know how much I believe that, but I'm not her. I think she just said yes to who wanted her first. And that's who she was going to be locked into. So Brendan, would have locked into her first and made her feel secure first, and having that slow burn to make sure that, she was somebody he wanted to be with, then I think, it could have worked out. But Joe, not Joe, but Nick, he was in the pod saying that everyone was his number one. He was coming off corny. He was coming off disingenuous in a way. That's why I started calling him Icky Nicky. But he boiled it down to his top two, Kate and Annie. And as we know, him and Annie got together. But Kate needed to let it go because she had so much smoke. And at the end of the day, she wouldn't have liked him and he wouldn't have liked her, to be honest. And it didn't work out. There's no marriages. So, girl, please move on. But you want your 15 minutes of fame. You're on a reality show. I get it. Hopefully, you're looking to become an influencer. You have a different face. You've done your GLP-1s. I ain't mad at that. You slimmed down, you got your hair together and all that. Annie, she still looks drunk. Her extensions were better. They are still all over the place. And her face did not look the same. Her face looked crazy. Like, how did you get extra here? It's those fillers. Y'all are too young for it and y'all are looking old. Stop it. To my white sisters, stop it, please. I'm sorry that God didn't bless a lot of you guys with full lips, cheekbones, and things like that. That's just the way that nature works. Yes, I thank God for, the beauty enhancements that we have in this day and age, but you got to be wise. Y'all need to go watch Botch Rewind, because that has some insight on what happens when you can't get these fillers anymore, or you have to let them dissolve because now your face is all messed up. You're going to look messed up. But we're going to find out in about 10, 15 years, y'all, and I'm going to be pulled up watching. So we're going to get to Anton and Allie. Anton, he has moved on. He's got a girlfriend. They showed her in the audience. They asked him about, the restaurant scene where the young lady, Joe's girlfriend, can't remember her name. I think he said her name was like Melissa or something, can't remember. And, Allie went to the bathroom and her spilling all that tea about going to the strip clubs and all that and, adding fuel to the fire when it comes to Allie. He said he only met her twice, so how does she know anything about me and what I do? My theory is she wanted to get rid of Joe because they're not together anymore anyway. She wanted to get rid of Joe. He came to her house for a date one time and he never left. Hobosexual. And maybe she could stir the pot a little bit and stir the pot in their friendship. And, and maybe she can get him out that way. That's my theory. I'm not going to be wrong. I'm making stuff up, but it seems plausible. So he thought that was shady. He thought that wasn't right. And Allie never bring it back up. She was upset, said we'll talk about it later, but never really brought the issue back up. She just kind of kept it inside, just to give her an excuse of how the altar came out, where she says, oh, the guy I met in the pods, isn't, the same guy. Here I stand. Okay. And, ultimately, as we know, because I'm not going to stick around these couples long, like, he didn't have enough money for her. Like, he's a truck driver and a truck driver instructor in logistics. And he makes decent money. Like, the average person who's not getting $1,500 to $2,000 worth of fillers in their face. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I said in my last video, I'm 43 next month. Right? But that's it. That's for symmetrical purposes. But in my quest to find out more about this, one syringe of lip filler is $700. Where I go, okay? $700. And you got a lot of filler. So 700 times 2, that's 1,400. And I'm pretty sure you're getting a few syringes of filler put in that. You're spending thousands of dollars on your face while he does make good money to support you. But you have to then work, in my opinion, like I said, you're a nurse, you don't want to work, you can work per diem so that you can earn the $2,000 to $3,000 that you need every several months, right, to get your fillers, But anyway, he thought that was real shady what the friend did. And then, Allie also claimed like she wasn't feeling the stripper thing because, certain men can do that. I didn't understand that certain men can go to strip clubs. What's the certain men that can go? You tell me, girlfriend, what's the certain men that can go to the strip club? Okay. And she had this return to religion. We were going to return to religion. So are you saved or not? They claim in Christianity and the Jesus I know. Are you saved or not? Are you a devout? Are you a consistent Christian or not? Return to religion, meaning you didn't go back yet, but you're holding them on the standard of what you will do in the future about going to church and serving the Lord. Or being, somebody who goes to church, because I'm assuming they might be more Catholic, right? That's what I'm assuming. So when were you planning to get devout? So I could see if after your return to religion and he was going to the strip club or, you heard about that, whatever. I think that was just an excuse to say no because he didn't make money. But I never knew them to be religious. Return to religion when y'all drinking and got the tattoos and stuff. Not to say that you can't, but you're being super self-righteous. That's all I'm saying. I got that tattoo. I have a piercing, but don't be so self-righteous as like, this is why you can't be with someone. You should have made those declarations in the beginning, said these things in the pods. But again, we didn't see your relationship in the pods. It seemed very surface level, and you were surface level as we later find out because, and I'm skipping all around because it doesn't even matter. She knew it was over for her and Anton when they were in Baja and she saw his toes. And she said it, and she was probably, she was serious. Let's keep it real, okay? And that's all I gotta really say about them. Like, I don't know who that is. I hope that, I don't know. I don't hope nothing for her. To be honest, I don't hope nothing for her. All that Botox and stuff, I don't know who that was. She got a boob job, it looks like. Anton's, happy and moved on. He brought his girlfriend. And when they asked about her dating life, I want to keep my personal life private. You're on a show about dating. This is a question you're going to ask. Let's be real. You're not dating anyone because it's been put out there that you want a sugar daddy, a sugar papa. You don't want to work. You don't cook. You don't clean. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom and things like that. But when, or I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife, but when I have kids, I want to stay at home. Like, you want to be stay-at-home. You want to be taken care of. There's nothing wrong with that. But please be real to yourself. You want to be a princess. And honey, when you get pregnant and and your face naturally plumps up because of the hormones and you got that feeling, girl, you gonna be a mess, child. Shoo. Anyway, and then lastly, they give like 2 seconds to KB and Edmund. I didn't even write any notes for that because it was all about accountability and ownership. They made us think that she was bringing receipts out on Edmund, but she says she got a bad memory, so she got to write it all down. So it's whatever, Basically, he was dismissive off camera. She claims that he has made her to look like an angry black woman. She asked him not to do that. He cried a lot, the first 10 days and on his knees and all this kind of stuff. And she, didn't like that. And then one day he dried up the tears and said, I ain't gonna cry no more. And then was dismissive, She says she thought she could fix it. She likes the red flags and all of these kinds of things. And, the real of it all is, I think still she wanted to be on TV. She wanted to be on the cast and she was going to push through to the end. What could this bring her? I'm not mad at her at the end of the day. I know I talked a lot of stuff in my videos that I made, but at the end of the day, they're all on TV trying to do something. So it doesn't matter. Edmund never recalled what he did those things. He just said, every day I choose KB. He actually proved her point by not, addressing issues and just saying, I love you. Every day I choose KB when it came to doing those things. She said that, off camera, he was obnoxious and, and when that was addressed, I love you, KB. Every day I choose KB, but never addressing the things, I honestly got a headache from watching them. I still like Edmund, at the end of the day, I'm not mad at KB. It's whatever. I honestly can't tell you one way or the other. We just know that it was never going to work. I think you could tell by their vibe that they were incompatible. She is a woman who would be with a certain type of man, and that's just what it is, right? And it was a lackluster reunion. Those Casey and Allie really agitated me a bit. It's these young girls, they like to be delusional and stand in delusion as truth. And I think they get that from the time and the era that we currently are in, where, lies are the truth and the truth doesn't matter. And I think that's, this young generation is growing up in, unfortunately, because of, what comes from the head down. And so saying lies in the evidence of truth or what we can see is really where we're at in this time in our culture, in American culture, and in history. So it really troubles me of how we're going to be moving forward. People aren't honest with themselves. They have their truth. I think their truth, movement is really stupid because what is the truth? The truth is it's black and white. That's it in a nutshell. The girls with the filler faces really think they're the hot stuff, but we're going to see how that work out for you. None of these people were never ready to be married, let alone they shouldn't be in a relationship. They need to see a therapist. Well, that's all I got. It was lackluster. And that's that on that. But I made it through a whole season of a show. So I will be reviewing Married at First Sight. So stay tuned to that. And we're going to work our way through that. Drop some love in the comments. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Grow with me. I'm still trying to figure out how to do these videos, how I want to move forward, what's my little formula, and that can get better with time. But if you start with me on the ground level, we're gonna get there. Okay, so thanks so much for watching. Love is Blind is done. Thank the Lord. But until the next time, see y'all later. Bye.